Book 101's all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a language coach, life alignment, plus an author too, no other than Mr. Walter Freiberg.
Hi, Daniel. Nice being with you today. Thank you for the invite.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Walter. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Walter Freiberg. I'm a life and language coach and author. I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and right now I'm based in Montevideo, Uruguay. I support people in creating their future across languages.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mr. Walter, for sharing your knowledge to the world as well as your wisdom. And today, let's talk about being you as an author, as a life language coach. What makes books uniquely powerful tool for language learning compared to an apps or classroom instruction?
One of the things that I love the most about books, and especially fiction, is that we get a combination of dialogues, storytelling. We get to learn about different descriptions and we get to practice everyday language. And that's a special combination that we can find that maybe is not available when we are reading the news or when we are practicing with a textbook or with an app. We get the opportunity to be immersed in a story and engaged with that story. And I experienced that firsthand back in the day when I was learning German. And that was my inspiration to create my Spanish novels, my own series.
It's hard to learn German, people. It's the hardest language to learn, as I I think.
It's
I
tricky,
think
yes.
it's
Do
too
you do
much
you speak
tricky.
German, Daniel?
No, but they said it's really hard to learn German language. So, Mister, can you tell us about your novel in English or novels in English or
There
the
no, it's
novels
in
in
Spanish,
Spanish?
actually.
Yes.
Right. The website is in English and my brand, part of the brand is in English. And it's thought of a series of graded readers, easy novels for Spanish learners. And what is an easy reader or what is a graded novel? There's this common framework of reference for language learning. The very famous one is the one created in Europe, and it distributes like the language learning levels by a letter and a number. For example, A1 and A2 correspond to beginners, B1 and B2 to intermediates, and C1 and C2 to advanced or proficient speakers or learners of the language. So, what I created with my series is a series of books, a number of books that offer stories at different levels. So, when you're right starting out with an A1 level, total beginner, you get stories at a very simple level using simple tense, short sentences, short chapters. And then as you go advancing in more and more the new levels, you get more vocab, more longer books, longer chapters, longer stories. And in this way, learners are building their skills step by step.
Step by step, indeed, little by little. So, do you
Mhm.
think, Mr. Walter, you will expand these books to German, French, or English as well?
That's a great question. And that's something that I was asked very early in my writing. I wrote the first one in 2012. It's been more than 12 years. So it's 12 years ago. I wrote the first one that was An Estudiante. That was at the end of 2012. And I think that it was 20, that was a couple of years later, actually, that I was asked, Walter, would you like to create versions in different languages of these books? And I've always been hesitant to translating these books. And I'm open to creating other series in other languages, and they would be reflecting the typical customs and the use of language of every country. To give you an idea, these books are placed in Spain or South America. So if I were to write one or a series in German, I would like them to be placed in Germany and to be more connected to that culture. So right now, only Spanish novels is available, and I wrote them under a pen name that is Paco Ardit, is not using my own name, and I'm open to creating other versions.
Looking forward for that version, Mr. Walter. I want to learn German. Okay. I want to speak German fluently. So, Mr. Walter, how do you choose a book in a foreign language that's both challenging and accessible for learner skill level?
So, in terms of coming up with a story and choosing a topic or the characters, on the author's side, I try to pick a number of different stories, a lot of variety, different genres. You will see that in my series, there are thrillers like suspense, humor, adventure. There's a lot of variety. I wanted to cater to different preferences and tastes of people in reading their reading preferences. And when on the side of the learner, the people who is reading the books and learning, choosing the book, my invitation usually is to try different styles, different genres, and maybe a good idea is to go with caught your attention, what piques your interest. For example, if Muerte en Buenos Aires, if it sounds interesting, maybe you go with that. Or if it's something more romantic. And typically, the readers of my books, given that these are very short books, the beginner books are very short, easy readings. Typically, they did many of them. It's not that you have to choose, pick one, you can pick all of them. And they're easy to read. And maybe it's possible that some of them you will like some of them better than the others, and that's normal and that's perfect. And my encouragement is to try a wide variety of books. And this is something that I recommend to all language learners that are reading and practicing with books.
Yes, indeed. And for your Spanish novels, Mr. Walter, is it soon available to an audiobooks too?
Yes, there are indeed available as audiobooks, and all the books are available as ebook, as paperbacks, and as audiobooks. And the audiobooks are now available in one specific accent. For example, depending on the place. Muerte en Buenos Aires, that's placed in Argentina, that's spoken in an Argentinian Spanish, like the audiobook. The voices are using that type of Spanish. And other books are using Spanish from Spain, European Spanish. And then there are others who are using more of a neutral Spanish or close to Mexican Spanish, depending on where they are. So basically, those are the three Spanish accents that I'm using, and it depends on each book. So each one of them is in either European Spanish, Rio Platense Spanish, that's the fancy name of Argentinian Spanish, or neutral Spanish. So those are the options.
Oh, interesting, Mr. Walter. Interesting. So, can you share strategies for overcoming the frustration of encountering unknown vocabulary while reading?
Sure. My favorite strategy is when you come up with a word that you don't understand, you can skip it. You can just try to avoid the urge of looking that up in the dictionary immediately. You can skip the word. You can try to infer the meaning, try to see this might possibly mean. It's not that, in my opinion, it's not that we absolutely have to look up every single word that we don't know. That's my number one strategy. The second strategy would be to look up the word. And my preference, and that's why I typically use electronic devices to practice my reading, is using something like a Kindle reader or a phone or an iPad, something that has a touchpad that I can, or maybe that I can let that gives me an opportunity to select a word and look it up easily. I don't typically use paperback dictionaries. I know that they're still available and they are not my preference.
Yes, it's about your preference, people. What role does cultural context in literature play in deepening language understanding?
I think that plays a big role when people are learning Argentinian Spanish or they're learning Colombian Spanish. Learning about the culture is a big part. It's not just the words, it's not just the vocab and learning the phrases. We need to learn what's typical of that culture. And my idea with these books was also to convey part of that, even though I was born in Argentina, and I haven't been to all the places that I where I wrote those books. I haven't been to the places of the settings, and at the same time, I got some experience by consuming media or by meeting people or knowing people from different places. So there's a way of being of a person in Argentina or Colombia or Chile that is different from a way of being of a person in Canada, in the United States, UK. You probably know you are in Canada, and there are differences between Canada and the United States and Australia and New Zealand, and that's the same with Spanish-speaking countries and different cultures.
So, Mr. Walter, Spanish novels, what are your struggles in creating this?
My own struggles in creating these books.
Yes.
So, one of the difficult things at the beginning was deciding the criteria for what makes an A1 book or an A2 book, a B1 book, B2, choosing my own criteria. And that's something that I created myself. It was inspired by other books, and that was inspired also by my own experience as a language learner. I speak 5 languages, and at the point that I was writing, I wrote the first book, I only speak 3 languages, and I was learning German. And I had some experience and some exposure to graded books and graded novels. And that was the main challenge, I would say. And in terms of the production of the books, I wrote all the books myself. Of this 20, there's 26 books in total, and I wrote all of them myself. I came up with the stories all on my own. And the second challenge was creating the audiobooks because I needed to get help, and I hired voice talents, and that was a bigger project. So those were the main things, like choosing the criteria for difficulty level and what goes in A1, what goes in A2 in terms of verb tenses, length of sentence, paragraph, chapter, and book, um, complexity and difficulty in general in the usage of the language, and then the audiobook production.
So, should learners prioritize reading for fluency or accuracy?
Such a great question. And I think that it depends largely on the level they're at. At the beginning, I would say that I would focus more on fluency, trying to read for fluency. And what that means is that I'm not focusing on each word, or that I'm not trying to understand every single word and every single sentence that I'm reading. I'm trying to get a flowing experience when I'm reading. I'm trying to get immersed. I'm trying to develop the practice of being comfortable reading in the language. And at a later point, I think it would be a good idea to focus more on precision, accuracy when I am at intermediate, upper intermediate, and certainly at an advanced level. I want to focus more on accuracy and precision. There are words that I'm not understanding, and there will be fewer of them. I want to look them up. I want to use a monolingual dictionary, most probably. So if I'm reading the more advanced books, for example, the C1, C2, and B2, maybe I will be using a Spanish dictionary instead of using like Spanish English. I would try to understand the words, the vocab using the same language. That would be my piece of advice here.
Thank you for the piece of advice, Mr. Walter. And as an author and language coach, what are your short term and long term goals?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I will tell you first as a coach. So I am a life and language coach, and my short-term goals are connected to building further my practice in all the languages that I speak. I speak English, Spanish, German, Italian, and Portuguese, and I'm focusing on working in all of those languages. And on a second place, I'm thinking of adding a few more languages. I'm learning Thai at the moment. I'm not working in Thai right now, and this is a language that I'm planning to add to my repertoire of languages. So my long-term goals are connected to adding Thai to the languages that I will be using, and potentially two more that I'm not disclosing which ones. And this is a plan that I have for the next years. And I see myself also working, hosting live events, facilitating live events at least three different continents in Europe, here in South America, and in Asia, especially Southeast Asia. So that's something that I see for myself in terms of the life and language coaching, integrating and supporting people and creating their language, their life, their style of life in across different languages. And in terms of my books, what I have this series, and something that I am planning to do in this year is creating a community. That's something that I started experimenting with last year, and is offer more support for learners in a shared space that is probably be something like a Spanish novels club. And that's something that I'm working towards this year. And in the future, who knows? Maybe there's an app brewing in the next years that will enable people to use the books and learn with stories in a different way, incorporating AI capabilities and maybe new titles. That's something that could come up, and potentially also editions in other languages.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Walter, and looking
Thank
forward
you.
for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be a coach, want to be an author, and want to write their book?
My first piece of advice, if you want to be an author, I recommend to read books. And that's something that I did a lot of before becoming an author. I really love reading books, and I started in Spanish, my first language. And then I started reading books in English and eventually in other languages. So I think that it makes a lot of sense for a writer, for an author to be very well read. What I mean by this is read a lot and start small. You can start experimenting with short articles, short stories. In my case, I never attended university or courses in writing or how to write. It was just by doing it. I learned to develop my skills by doing it. For me, it was a great learning experience, just creating graded stories and graded readers because it was easier to write very short stories than it was to create longer stories. So that was a sustainable way um, of developing my writing skills. And that's something that I recommend to everybody. And in terms of coaching, something that I also recommend by a person who wants to get into coaching is being coached. If you experienced coaching, you get to see what's the potential of coaching, life coaching or language coaching or a combination. I encourage people to get an experience of coaching that usually, in my opinion, can be much more powerful than, for example, doing a training in coaching or reading books about coaching that are awesome. That's great. And I've done training, coaching training. I'm certified. I read books. And it's very different than experiencing coaching, either with a one on one coach, with an individual coach, or an experience in group coaching. So that's what I recommend getting an experience. And that's how you will see if that's something that you would like to do professionally, maybe.
Do professionally indeed. And thank you for your advice, Mr. Walter. Before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, book 101 review in fifth season, comedy 101 second season, and food 101 in fifth season too. Geography 101 in fourth season, Love Letters in third season, and My Baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in each fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in each first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Walter, how do you adopt reading strategies for languages with non Latin scripts?
Oh, that's a very good question. And that's something that I had to do when learning Thai. And in my case, I decided to learn the Thai script, and I really like the different scripts. There are non-Western scripts or not the typical that we use, and it's a challenge. Sometimes people prefer to focus on the listening first instead of reading or practicing that part. And this might sound like counterintuitive, or it might sound strange coming from an author. And that's a strategy that I think makes a lot of sense, even with Romance languages such as Spanish, English, German. Could be a good idea, something to consider to focus on the listening first. So if the reading or if the alphabet is like an obstacle to start learning a language, or if you feel a little bit intimidated, you can try a version of learning that doesn't include reading or writing, and maybe you can focus on listening. And there's a lot of value in practicing listening, your listening skills. um, Beyond that, I think that the learning of a different script, it takes time, it takes practice. And in order to be able to better read in a different script, I recommend practicing the writing, like the calligraphy, and that involves repetition. And I found that helpful in my experience. I tried that only with Thai. I learned the Thai script, and I'm not saying how would that be with Arabic or Chinese or Japanese. And my sense would be is that maybe it's similar, and maybe I'm mistaken.
Mr. Walter Freiberg, thank you so much for sharing your expertise to the world, your knowledge, your wisdom. Thank you so much. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your books as well as your coaching and any projects that you are doing right now?
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, it was wonderful. And I appreciate you having me here. And yes, people can find my books on Spanish novels.net or on Amazon. They're available on many places. There's also I also have a podcast that it's called Poder Aprender, and that's in English or Spanish, and that's another place where people can learn more about my approach and what I'm doing.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Walter Freiberg because if you support him, more and more and more empowering books like this to come, more and more empowering coaching to come. So, Mr. Walter, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, and good luck with the German learning.
Yes, indeed. More to come, people. See you soon.